Good evening, everyone. I first want to apologize. I was really hoping to have this recording done this morning, but my day just got away from me with um, fall term one ending and trying to get grades submitted for my classes that ended. So anyways, with that apology, I'd like to provide you with an overview of the Unit 5 group assignment, as I'm sure that you are all having questions about that. So I'm going to do my best here, and hopefully I won't ramble on like I tend to do. So I'm here in Brightspace in Unit 5. The first thing to do is to figure out who's in your group. So go here, note that there are only 3 groups, and the first group has 3 members, the other 2 only have 2. We have a pretty small class, as you guys have probably seen. So with that, I'm going to go back. All right, and then the next thing to do would be to look at the workflow and process mapping assignment instructions. So I'm going to pull that up really quick here. Okay, so the first thing to do is to read the introduction. I'm not going to read that to you. This is a group assignment worth 60 points, and that is a group score. So you each would get 60 points. The only way that that changes is if I hear from you that really somebody did not do hardly anything. So please let me know if that does happen. It does unfortunately happen occasionally, but at this time, in the way it will stand, unless I hear from you, each of you would get have the potential to earn 60 points. And so the score, say your group earns 58 points, you would both get that point, the 58 score. Okay, so scenario here, you together consider yourselves as the revenue cycle manager at a primary care clinic. Note that this is ambulatory care. You wear many hats at this organization and currently oversee all revenue cycle functions, so registration, coding, billing, etc., the management, maintenance, and implementation of the EHR, as well as privacy and security. The organization has been sequentially implementing and adopting the EHR in a modular fashion. So that is similar to the sequential implementation discussed on pages 16 through 25 of the Margaret A text. The COVID-19 pandemic just hit, and you need to implement a more formal telehealth program. In preparation for telehealth visits, you asked a group of stakeholders to diagram the current process for carrying out patient registration. So see this diagram below. So this is the current as is patient registration process for this clinic. Okay. Not going to go through that either. I'll let you go through that. So once you receive the as is diagram, you need to determine the best workflow for registering telehealth visits within the EHR and determine the considerations that may need to be accounted for in this process, such as going about registering the patient for a telehealth visit versus a regular visit, okay? One of the important considerations you need to make is the fact that the patient must be registered in the EHR's patient portal in order to have a telehealth visit, okay? That's kind of key right there, okay? And adds a little bit of complexity to just you obviously redoing this as is workflow to accommodate just a different type of registration. So so let me just take a step back here. So what I need you guys to do is have a group meeting. Okay, so with your partner or your partners, set up a meeting and a time to meet. Ahead of that meeting, each of you should read chapter 5 in Margaret A's text. You should also research telehealth visits, why some organizations launch telehealth visits through their EHR, and registration for telehealth visits to fully understand the application and how it's used in ambulatory care. The other chapter to read would be chapter 15, which is focused on ambulatory care. Okay. Then, of course, once you've prepared and are already scheduled that a Zoom meeting with your group members, now you don't have to meet via Zoom, but it's nice because you obviously can see each other, you can share screens, all of those good things. If that doesn't work, of course, a phone call is just fine. But I really would like you to meet and talk to discuss this assignment, okay? Now, I know that there are only 2 of you or 3 of you in your group, but at your first Zoom meeting, you should designate a group leader to serve as the facilitator for the meetings, designate a secretary to record meeting minutes. The minutes are actually going to be one of your deliverables, and then identify group member roles and responsibilities. So divvy up the work essentially, okay? The assignment deliverables are, like I mentioned, your team's meeting minutes, a use case scenario, which I'm going to talk about in just a second, and then a new proposed telehealth patient registration workflow diagram. Okay. All right. So the meeting minute deliverable. So meeting minutes should be taken at all of your group meetings. Minutes need to be written using some type of word processing software. So just like every other assignment, right? Should be typed in 12-point font times New Roman. There's no page length requirement. I just want to see that you've met and kind of what you talk about. So please identify the date and time of your meeting and the group members that attended. Obviously, if there's only 2 of you, there's no group meeting, but please maybe then just if something comes up or happens, just do your best to document how you went about, addressing all this assignment, okay? The method or technology that you use to meet, whether it was Zoom or phone conference, and then the group member names and each member's role and responsibility within the group, and the outcomes from each meeting. So tasks to be completed and any other information that you want to share to summarize your discussion, okay? Then in terms of the use case deliverable, so I want you to develop and explain a process model for representing a specific scenario, also known as a use case, for at least 2 different users of a patient registration system. So a use case diagram provides a higher level view of a system. These diagrams are the blueprints when designing a system, and they provide a simplified and graphical representation of what the system must actually do. So for this particular deliverable, I want you to identify a scenario or a use case where the patient registration system is currently used, or whether the patient registration system could be used for telehealth patient registration. Okay. Now I've done an example here for you all, just like as an example, right? It's right here. I did not use patient registration. I utilized CPOE, okay? And so this is just, like I said, an example. And so I don't want you to do your use case on CPOE. This has happened. I want you to do your use case on patient registration, okay? So identify that scenario where a patient registration system is currently used, or where the patient registration system could be used for telehealth patient registration, okay? So in my sample below for CPOE, there is an alert built into a computerized provider entry system that notifies the user of a potential drug-drug interaction. Identify 2 users that interact with your CPOE. Oh, hold on a second. This is, I'm gonna modify this a little bit with the CPOE scenario. I don't know where that came from. Okay. So anyways, so I identify 2 users that interact with the CPO scenario. And so for example, in this one, it's a primary care physician and a pharmacist that are the users of the CPOE system, where the system alerts of the drug-drug interaction. So your task is to develop a use case process model diagram that depicts the unique user interaction with a patient registration scenario for a telehealth patient registration. And your process model diagram must include the following. It should use standard UML symbols for use case diagramming. And so you can find examples of UML symbols at this link right here. There's also a video here on how to develop a use case diagram. Students have said that this is extremely helpful. So definitely take a look at that, watch that. And then just the requirements of this is that your use case should include a minimum of 3 steps. The steps should be high level. Each step should describe a session with the system. So as stated on that Carnegie Mellon website above here, they use a example of an open shutter, flash, and closed shutter as part of their example, okay? And so I'm not going to read all this to you, but definitely take a look at that. And then To conclude that use case, I want you to provide a textual summary of how to interpret the diagram. So there should be just kind of a summary for each user. So identify the two users that interact with your patient registration scenario. And then, of course, your scenario must be different from the example that I provided below. Okay. And here's an example of that summary for each of the characters in this example. Okay, so please note here too, I'm not as concerned with the accuracy of the process, but rather your understanding of how to diagram a potential scenario. So making that use case, okay? I would like you to use Lucidchart to create your business process modeling diagram. Lucidchart is one of the Google system tools. And so you can log in using your CSS login credentials. It's a really slick tool and very intuitive. So I think you guys will all be able to pick that up very quickly, okay? Now, the next thing, and this is probably, I would say, the most important component of this assignment because our course discussion is going to revolve around your workflow diagram and this deliverable. So I will note, make a note right now or mention right now that your diagram, this workflow diagram I have right here, is due next Wednesday, the 10th. So not this week, Wednesday, but next week, Wednesday, the 10th. Where did I put that? There we go. And then your response would be due on, your response post would be due on the 14th of November, okay? So let's see here, what next? The as-is workflow diagram above, which I showed you, okay? This is the as-is diagram, okay? So you're going to be basically redoing this to incorporate telehealth registration. Okay. There we go. Sorry. All right. So in the as-is workflow diagram above, you're able to see the current patient registration process at the primary care clinic. So what would that patient registration process look like for telehealth visits? You are charged with drawing a redesigned workflow for the use of patient registration software for telehealth visits in the form of a swim lane process map. Please note that this does need to be in the swim lane. There are tons of examples out there online, but there are also examples in the Oaks and Waters textbook as well, okay? So again, I want you to use Lucidchart. This is, again, a free application for CSS students that will allow you to illustrate the redesigned workflow using appropriate workflow and swim lane diagram symbols. So first thing that you should do as a team is analyze that as-is swim lane diagram. Make sure that you understand it and how it flows and all of the steps that are currently taking place. And so then within your swim lane diagram, the group should exhibit analysis of that original registration process. Like I should see that it's obviously different than that original run, right? And I want you to provide evidence of research surrounding the updated telehealth registration process. So I want to see that you did indeed go out and look for resources around registering telehealth patients for their visits, okay? I should say patients for their telehealth visits. Then get going, I guess, on developing that. And so pull up the Lucidchart. There are examples out online, but there are also swim lane templates available within Lucidchart. Here are some instructions for signing up for the use of Lucidchart using your CSS email and login credentials. In order to develop your swim lane, your group must understand what a swim lane diagram looks like and what it is, and you must identify the primary stakeholders involved in the patient registration process, okay? So that is definitely something that you should discuss as a group, okay? Once you have completed the steps above, your group is ready to begin drawing your proposed redesigned patient registration process for telehealth visits. Downtime in your registration system does not have to be documented in the workflow. Again, please use appropriate UML tools and symbols for or within your swim lane diagram. And then, like I mentioned earlier, will be the swim lane diagram will be the center of the unified discussion forum. So when your group has completed the swim lane, you should export it as a PDF and save it. One group member should then attach the swim lane diagram in a new discussion post thread and identify your group member names within that post, okay? As individuals, so I just need one initial post from your group. And then as individuals, you need to reply to one group post. So each group member should respond to a different initial group post. Okay, I hope that makes sense. So I want you guys to, since there's only 3 groups and you have such small groups, this should be pretty straightforward, I would think. And then of course, your group should decide how you will handle questions that other students have about your diagram, okay? And how you're going to address those within the discussion forum. So some logistical things to consider here. So both the use case and the swim lane diagram should be exported from Lucidchart as PDF files and saved. When you are ready to post the swim lane diagram to the discussion board, again, one group member should do that as a PDF attachment. And when you are ready to submit all of the assignment deliverables in Brightspace, one group member should upload the 2 PDF documents and the word process meeting minutes. So you both don't need to. I know that you're in a group, or that the 3 of you are in a group, and I know who you are. And so you don't both need to upload them or submit the assignment, okay? I would also like you to provide a reference list with all of the references you utilize for this assignment. It's important that each group member keep track of the resources they use depending on your responsibilities, okay? Of course, follow correct APA style. And again, like I mentioned at the beginning, the grade given for the group assignment deliverables will be the same for every student in the group unless there are special circumstances, okay? All right, and then here is the grading rubric. As you note, I have that also broken out. So here's how I will grade your meeting minutes. Here's how I will grade your use case scenario. And here's how I will grade your workflow and process mapping swim lane diagram. All right, I spoke very fast. I went through that pretty quickly, at least it felt like it. And I'm sorry that I was actually changing that as it went. I think I pulled that from another assignment in another grad course in the health informatics program and forgot to just change some of the language there because we do use case diagrams in both. So yeah, so with that, I'm going to let you go. Please let me know if you have any questions at all, and don't hesitate to post in the discussion forum or send me an email. But if you do have a question, I'm sure others are wondering the same thing. And any issues with Zoom or Lucidchart or whatever, let me know. All right, thanks so much, everyone. Have a good evening.